Well, so much for elbows up and Canada strong because GM Canada has laid off 1,200 auto workers as of Friday at one of the largest auto manufacturing factories in the country. Now, this plant in particular has had its highs and lows and down points, but nothing like this. Because this is all in the work of Mark Carney and Doug Ford betraying the residents of Ontario and the country as a whole. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, after Mark Carney's visit to China renegotiating a trade deal, China snags a Canadian gold mining company in a $5.5 billion takeover. That's right, the Prime Minister went to China, shook hands, and now apparently China is taking over our gold reserves in a all-cash deal. But the average citizen carries around a couple $1,000s in cash. That's considered criminal. That's according to these new updated laws and regulations placed upon Canadians. Now, I just want to say that this is no defense of China. There's a lot of shady stuff that they do. But there is one thing particular to note. Do you ever wonder why China is able to just cash out $5.5 billion in a snap to take over a country's gold reserve? Or be the economic powerhouse that it is? Or be able to scatter all around the world building up infrastructure? It's because, while yes, China is under communist rule by the Communist Party, the country, every time it produces, reinvests in itself. It doesn't tax its citizens to death and then send the money abroad. Or worse, stuff it in the politicians' pockets and go live luxury in some political BS crap. That's what's happening here, folks. That's why China is able to dominate without actually using military force. You know, I was asked this once in a conversation that if something happens and we do go into World War III, which is a possibility at this point, and I'm not being over exaggerated, I'm not being hyperbolic, I'm saying that in the situation that we're in, there's a possibility. If that does happen, and it comes down to the main superpowers of the United States, China, and Russia, who would dominate on top? Easiest answer is China. Now hear me out. Because while the United States has the dominant military force, they have over 1,000 plus military bases worldwide that we can account of, not including all the secret bases, the shadow military operations that are going on day to day without you even knowing about it. 80 plus years of warfare, $39 trillion wasted on these endless wars. Did the United States ever prosper? Not really. And every time the United States does one of these regime change wars where they think they can just go into a country, take the resources, hold the country hostile, extract the president or prime minister or whoever the leader is, and just insert whoever they want to lead, it never always comes out clean. There's always going to be something that's going to bite back in your face. Look at Vietnam. Look at Korea. Look at the 20 plus years in Afghanistan, Iraq, and all these Middle Eastern disasters that we have included ourselves into. And I'm saying that as a Canadian. Because even the peacekeeping Canada that didn't participate in Vietnam and didn't participate in the Iraq invasion in the early 2000s, we had our fair share of war porn. Now, why didn't I say Russia? Because while Russia does have a dominant currency, the ruble is the top currency of the world right now, they have the BRICS Accord that is aligning all these countries together. They do have military power. The last few years, with this Ukraine nonsense, the manufactured war done by NATO to try to stifle Russia and break it up to bits, has not really helped Russia in a prosperous way that they thought it was going to be. Which is also another reason why I think the United States will fall flat on their face first. Because they spread themselves way too thin trying to do world conquests all around the world, trying to do these regime changes, trying to do these military operations, extractions, and so on. That's costing time, energy, lives, dollars, and it just doesn't make sense. Now here's why ultimately I say China. And again, I am not backing their country. I'm not saying, favorability over the United States or Canada or any other country for that matter. Strategically, China has a point. When was the last time the Chinese military engaged in a war? The answer is 1979, for only 30 days. That was the last time the Chinese army engaged in offensive warfare. Whereas America, European nations, Canada, and elsewhere have engaged in warfare for the last, 50, 60, 70 years. I mean, we can't even really keep count at this point. So while we're blowing ourselves up to bits all around the world, China has been building up internally. That's why they're the economic superpower that they are. Because what they produce, what they sell, what they offer to the world comes back to them. It invests back into the country. And if Canada truly wants to be that dominant power, the Canada first, the elbows up crowd, the Canada strong, it wants to be, it needs to adopt that mentality. Not the communist WHO, WEF surveillance state that Canada is turning itself into, because that's happening all around the world, regardless if China's involved or not. That's just globalism for you. But we gotta stop this wasteful spending abroad. We gotta stop with these external affairs in other countries that we should not have a say in whatsoever, and invest in the people back home. Invest in industries like the auto manufacturing. Not with shitty EVs that are not going to sell, because we know that Canada's a cold country. I mean, look at the weather right now. Do you think an electric vehicle is going to save you in this cold? No, the battery's going to freeze, or probably going to be drifted off to the side of the road, and you just wasted $100,000 on one of the Cybertrucks. But we can actually incentivize that every time our country grows in prosperity of GDP, or all these taxes that we keep getting. We're overtaxed regardless. Obviously, that needs to be re-examined. But with that money, should be directly invested into the country. It should not leave at any point in time to another country. It's funny how people mention about NATO, how we need to spend more on NATO, how we need to contribute more to NATO. I argue, on the other hand, that we should not even be involved in NATO. Instead, take the money that we're wasting with them in these ridiculous tirade wars and invest in our own national security. How about putting that money to the border agents to protect us from intruders? How about investing that to municipal policing so they can actually catch criminals? Why are we not investing that into our soldiers so they can actually defend the country right here at home? But of course, someone's going to say, it's communism, it's socialism. How dare you mention about that? We need to keep the free market, blah, 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 blah. Well, how can we maintain capitalism if we keep losing jobs? If factories and industries keep leaving the country? If we have more people on the streets and lining up at food banks because they can't afford the basic essentials of life like groceries? How is that keeping the free market? How is that keeping capitalism? How is that keeping anything? So yes, China has a lot of flaws. China has a lot of shenanigans and stuff that I do not agree with at all. And that's going for any country, really. There's no such thing as a perfect country, I would say. But there's a reason why you go to Shanghai or Beijing and it looks like something out of Star Trek. Whereas you walk the streets here and it looks like Dawn of the Dead. If people are going to say that they're Canada first and Canada strong, then that should be their only priority at this point. Stop with these endless shenanigans and focus on the people that work hard, that build up this country, that keep this country running, and prioritize the industries that keep this country afloat. That's how you build and maintain a nation.